Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you're having a great day. Jay, Clouded Reactions. You tuned into the video, so here I am. This is the history behind Firestorm. You guys already know how we do on history videos. We keep the intro short and sweet. Look what's already saying right here. Strategic or terror bombing. Look, it already has a little warning on it. This video depicts events of historical and humanitarian importance that were especially graphic and violent. Material may include depictions, recordings, photographs, and videos of hateful language, violence, death or dying, genocide. Parental advisory for viewers under 16 years old is advised. Interesting. This is Sabaton history video number 98, which means they had 97 other videos depicting pretty much what they're talking about right now. But they decided 97 videos in on the 98th video to slap a content warning on it. So that's kind of making me nervous. Hopefully they're not going to be overexposed to something that we've never seen before, that they really haven't touched down on. Although we have seen some terrible stuff. I've had to throw in some content warnings on some of my history reactions. I was supposed to keep this intro short and sweet. Sorry, I do like to babble. Anyways, I know. Jay, shut up, shut up. 24 minutes long.
Here on the Sabaton History Channel, we have done one or more episodes dedicated to almost every single song that has appeared as a regular track on one of Sabaton's albums that deal with military history. We haven't done everything from Metalizer, basically, right? But, and sure, there's some bonus tracks and preludes and things, but almost every single song that's a regular song on a Sabaton album except one.
And that is Firestorm.
The end of July 1943. Hamburg's firefighters have spent the last couple of days trying to stem the damage from British bombing raids. High explosives have not just ruined many buildings, but have also torn craters into the streets, which has made rescue attempts difficult. But although the water reserves are running low, it seems like they'll manage. But then, on the night of July 27th, a fleet of 730 British bombers appears over the city. More than 2,300 tons of bombs are...
730 airplanes, and each one's got like how many bombs? So multiply that times how many bombs, and that's how many. That is literally a car, because it's just constant barrage of bombs. What survives? Oh my god.
Dropped in just 1 hour. This time, and 2,300 tons of bombs are dropped in just 1 hour. This time, including 17,000 incendiary bombs. Major fires break out all over the...
Incendiary bombs, too. Not just regular... I mean, bombs are going to be bombs regardless. They're going to blow up. Incendiary? Doesn't that just light everything on fire? Are they like mini napalm or something like that?
Including 17,000 incendiary bombs. Major fires break out all over the city, which soon merge together in a storm of fire. Wooden structures combust under the immense heat of up to 800 degrees Celsius. The strong summer winds begin to drive the inferno through the streets, and the heat drives them to hurricane speeds of 240 kilometers an hour. Craving oxygen, the firestorm sucks at the air with such force that buildings collapse and trees are uprooted from the ground. People are sucked into the flames and immediately incinerated.
Man.
Thousands of others die slowly from carbon monoxide poisoning in shelters. Hamburg burns. The flames destroy 12 square miles, immediately incinerated. Thousands of others die slowly from carbon monoxide poisoning in shelters. Hamburg burns.
I don't want to... I've heard... I'm not saying this is true, but I've heard that suffocation by inhaling smoke is actually a peaceful way to go, because since you get choked out, you get lightheaded, then you pass out, and then you pass away. I don't know if that's true. That's just something I heard. I think it was a video I watched a long time ago about like, it's like 1,000 ways to die, and one of the least ways to go versus some of the horrible ways to go. Of course, you're panicking before that. You know it's coming. It's a slow realization of what's going to happen. Pain-wise, I hear it's not as bad. Of course, that's just an opinion. I'm not saying that, you know, they didn't suffer at all. That is not what I'm saying. If that's what you think I'm saying, Lord have mercy, no.
Slowly from carbon monoxide poisoning in shelters. Hamburg burns. The flames destroy 12 square miles and kill more than 18,500 people in just that night alone. By August 3rd, after 2 more raids, 60% of Hamburg has been burned and more than 35,000 of its inhabitants are dead. The Germans are stunned, dazed with disbelief. For British Bomber Command, it is a resounding success. The scale of the conflagration and the ensuing firestorm are not an accident or a byproduct of the bombing. It has worked just as intended. Hamburg had been number 1 on the target list for well over a year. British scientists had been studying the meteorological conditions and the wind speeds in and out of the city for months. High winds would be the best catalyst for the firestorm they sought to unleash. Questions revolved around how many fires needed to be started until it became an uncontrollable force of its own, one that would ultimately overwhelm the German firefighters.
Right.
Bombing trials were scheduled and models of the city's urban areas were built to accurately study the vulnerability of German houses to fire. The main target of the incendiary raid was to be the most densely packed residential area of the city, close to its center. At first, a group of Pathfinder bombers would drop aluminized strips to create false echoes on the German radar screens, right? Shielding the coming planes from coordinated fighter attacks. A second group would drop small anti-personnel explosives with delayed action triggers to intimidate the rescue efforts. Some were timed for between 3 and 10 minutes after impact. Others would explode if they were hit by a jet of water. Then the main force would arrive and drop incendiaries like magnesium bombs mixed with an oil base. The Mark II incendiary bomb was a deadly mixture of white phosphorus and benzol gel. Everything worked as planned in creating the perfect firestorm. Hamburg was burnt to ashes. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill had promised Soviet high command a year earlier that although an invasion of Europe was not yet possible, they would continue to attack the Germans at every possible occasion. At first, the sporadic bombing raids against German cities had been a way for the Royal Air Force to show defiance. When they happened, the Germans had to use valuable military and administrative resources to fight them off, and these were desperately needed at the battlefronts. But now, the British were determined to turn those raids into a strategic concept, one that would break not only Germany's military capabilities, but break the population's spirit. And Churchill had just the right man at hand to fulfill such a goal. Air Marshal Arthur Harris had been appointed Commander-in-Chief of the British Royal Air Force as part of the new Area Bombing Directive in February 1942. Harris already had a reputation as a ruthless and uncompromising leader who had personal contempt for the Germans and the totalitarianism of the Nazis. He fully expected air power to win the war and possibly even avoid a costly invasion of Europe against entrenched fanatics, as he called them. If he just had a fleet of 1,000 bombers, Harris argued, he could reduce any major German city to rubble. His proposed mass carpet bombing campaigns would shorten the war, and the more ruthlessly they attacked, the more it would save Allied lives in future. Harris proposed that instead of attacking single factories or military targets, they should bomb the urban centers of Germany's cities. For him, the tightly packed worker districts were valuable targets. Total war was the people's war. Each industrial worker was as important to the war effort as the soldier at the front was. If the bombers targeted urban areas, they would affect several industries at once, too, either through absenteeism or the death of the workers. If they wanted to win this war, Harris argued, they would have to kill a lot of Germans either way. Dehousing the Germans was also the most likely way to break their will to resist, as losing one's home was considered to have the most demoralizing effect. The Nazis entered this war under the rather childish delusion that they were going to bomb everybody else and nobody was going to bomb them. At Rotterdam, London, Warsaw, and half 100 other places, they put that rather naive theory into operation. They sowed the wind, and now they are going to reap the whirlwind. Cologne, Lübeck, Rostock. These are only just the beginning. We cannot send 1,000 bombers at a time over Germany every time as yet, but the time will come when we can do so. Arthur Harris, June 1942. Such biblical terms were not accidental. The attack on Hamburg was codenamed Operation Gomorrah for the apocalyptic scenery it would produce. Like the British propaganda said, Harris also stood behind the fact that the incendiary attacks on German cities were not simple acts of terror bombing. They were retaliation, acts of revenge for what the Luftwaffe had done during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. The bombing of Coventry in November 1940 was seen as the example of German cruelty. Although the Luftwaffe's...
I mean, it's true, you know, like, you do feel bad once you really look at the practice of it. Carpet bombing entire cities. But during World War, and you're seeing this country and what it can do and what it has already done, you had to resort to not just unorthodox tactics, you go to immoral tactics as well. During World War, man, where everybody's involved and you don't know what the outcome's gonna be. I mean, emotions run high and you start making decisions that, you know, it doesn't sound right, but at the time, for the time, you know, sounds like the good way to go.
Aim had been to cripple the local aircraft industry. Much of its heavy bombs and incendiaries had fallen upon the residential areas, causing a high civilian death toll and the destruction of the city. Harris and British Bomber Command would now, as the war turned, Coventry German cities as well. In the first 4 months of 1945, British bombers dropped 4 times the bomb tonnage on German cities that the Luftwaffe had dropped during its 10-month-long campaign against Britain. On the night of February 13th, Dresden burned. 800 Lancaster bombers dropped more than 2,600 tons of bombs on the mostly undefended city. Nearly half of the bombs were incendiary, and more than 15 square miles of the city was devastated by fire. Dresden's historic center burned to ashes as more than 75,000 houses succumbed to the firestorm. Over 25,000 people are estimated to have been killed that night.
Wow.
In Britain, people began to question such actions. Was this really justified? Was this not just terror against civilians? Dresden hadn't been a fortress city, nor did it have major war-related industries. Instead, it was full of refugees and evacuees fleeing the Eastern Front. But Harris wanted to see the city bombed because it would make the German administration in the sector collapse and would delay the transport of German troops to the front. It was war, after all. But even as the final phase of the war began and more cities burned, there was no sign of surrender. Not in Germany, not in Japan. The U.S. had been confronted by the destructiveness of modern air power when Japanese naval aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941. Actually, Harris lived in Washington, D.C. at the time and was busy closing a deal with the American aircraft industry as news of that air raid came in. Since the early 1930s, American military planners had foreseen the need for long-range bombers for a future war fought far from American shores. So they had been developed. While any retaliation was seen as a good thing, Tokyo itself was on the target list for retaliation bombing after the Doolittle raid of April 1942. That had little more than propaganda effect, similar to the initial British raids on the German Rhineland. But then, with Harris establishing a working relationship between the British and American air leaders, the U.S. Air Force began studying the efficiency of firebombing. The development of the B-29 Superfortress bomber pretty much embodied the possibility of destroying a city from the air. With a range of over 3,200 miles, that's over 5,000 kilometers, it could easily reach the Japanese homeland from American forward air bases, and each plane could deliver a bomb load of up to 20,000 pounds, that's over 9,000 kilos. Such a fleet would finally not only get revenge for Pearl Harbor, but do it 1,000-fold. By February 1945, they were ready, and U.S. Air Force General Curtis LeMay ordered the first large-scale bombing runs against Tokyo. By then, Japanese defensive capabilities had been very much diminished. Their air force barely existed anymore. The fleet was shattered, industry marginalized. Still, Tokyo refused to surrender, even after the first low-altitude raids began. Japanese people still went to work as their families grew accustomed to the daily air raids. Each night, they went to bed fully dressed to not waste time in case of an attack. But this was to little avail on the night of March the 9th, when 279 B-29 bombers appeared in the skies over the capital. In the darkness, at an altitude of just under 2,500 feet, they dropped more than 1,600 tons of bombs. Most of them were cluster bombs, each releasing several smaller napalm and oil-based incendiary bomblets. M47 incendiaries, a mix of gelled gasoline and white phosphorus, ignited as they dropped into the tightly packed residential areas. The ensuing conflagration was even more devastating than those in Germany. A firestorm was ignited as the columns and walls of flames were whipped through the streets. Since the Japanese used more wood in the construction of their buildings than Europeans, the devastation was more total.
Wow.
Large parts of the capital were
Just
simply
gone.
obliterated by the flames,
City's
leaving
just
more than
gone.
1 million people homeless. The numbers are still disputed, but somewhere between 88,000 and 200,000 people fell victim to the flames. In the end, it mattered little if such raids were justified or not. Firebombing gave way to a dangerous precedent. Such carpet bombing runs with high explosives and incendiaries did not just kill people, they incinerated them. They blew them to pieces. They deliberately asphyxiated them or burned them alive. It was another line crossed, yet another extreme of total war. When months later arguments raged about the ethical use of the atomic bomb, people began pointing fingers to Hamburg, to Dresden, to Tokyo. Mass extinction was already here. The atom bomb, so an argument went, might actually be more humane.
And that's the argument from today. People argue whether it was necessary. Some people say, hey, you know what? It spared future lives because it ended the war like that. But at the same time, how many lives did you end to do that? Innocent lives, civilian lives. So you gotta weigh how many were lost, how many innocents were lost to save future lives. Was that the same amount? Did you actually kill more than like if you didn't do that and the war continued? Maybe not as many lives would have lost. Maybe it would have ended naturally in a different way. There's people on both sides of the fence. I'm not gonna pick a side because I'm just in the middle. I don't know. I can't. It's easy in hindsight to say yes and no, you know. But once you're there, making the decision, and it's a tough decision. It's not like something they just decided just willy-nilly. Yeah, you know what? Screw it. Screw them. Blow them up. Like I said, it's easy to speculate. It's easy to pick apart arguments in hindsight. But once you're there on the floor, it's not as easy.
An argument went, might actually be more humane. What made you think of this to illustrate Sun Tzu?
Well, I think the chapter was something like Destruction by Fire, or I can't remember, one of the second to last chapter.
Okay.
In the Art of War, and the only thing the most fitting in modern military conflict was carbon bombing. I think that corresponded to that chapter.
Now,
which is crazy because they did cover songs about napalm. I think it was Into the Fire, which would have fit just as good, but since they already did, I guess they can't redo it again. But I mean, it makes perfect sense as well. Still to do with fire.
Yeah.
Back to the metalizer. Okay, Peter.
I think it would be actually Burn Your Crosses, that song.
Okay.
It's about a man, sentenced to death for crimes he did not commit, and questioning his faith in Christianity or religion and such.
What's it called? I'm sentenced for crimes. Oh, what song is this? Ooh, that sounds good. The premise of the song sounds good. A guy being sentenced to death for a crime he did not commit and struggling with his religion? Is that what he pretty much summed it up like that? Spoilers! No, I refuse.
10 years at least.
Really cool. How does the audience react to that, though? Do they know that album as well as some of the others?
Well, depends, actually. With the song 7734, we had that re-recorded on a special edition of, I think it was the Heroes album, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And then people had heard it, of course, because it was, released again, and re-released. But the Metalizer song was, Hellrider, yeah. We played in Netherlands. No, I would say 50% of the crowd at least were going, okay, what are they playing now?
Oh. So are there fans that found out about Sabaton after Metalizer and didn't even go back to their previous albums to see what songs they used to do before they found their, you know, battle history type of music? So, because they just said that when they play these older songs, some fans, they have no idea what they're even playing. Alright, so that's that anyways. So, you know, like I said, you can see the argument, but I don't know, what side of the fence are you guys on? Do you guys think it's a necessary evil, or do you think it's something that could have just been bypassed altogether and maybe created another new plan? But remember, the time that you're thinking of something to do, people are dying, your men are dying, you gotta figure out some kind of strategy. You gotta come up with it quick. Carpet bombing, that's on the table. You saying no to it, you gotta think of another plan, you gotta think of another strategy, but now the pressure's on you because now they're waiting on you. They have a plan, it's good to go, it's ready to go. It's got some pushback, especially during a time like a world war. It's not just a simple battle where you have time, you know, to reassess. The whole world is burning, the whole world is in on it. You gotta act fast. Anyways, to prevent this video from being like an hour long, I'm gonna go ahead and shut up right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the reaction. I certainly enjoyed the video. Always good to enjoy learning some history, especially on a nice cloudy day like today. Like I said, there's good things about the monsoon season, there's bad things about the monsoon season. Bad thing, I'm in this room. Good thing, it is finally nice outside. Well, you guys stay safe out there, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.